Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a room most people never dared enter. It's dark, damp, and vaguely sweet-smelling, like overripe fruit left on a windowsill too long. You're not in a castle or a chapel or even a scholar's study. You're below all that, literally, in a basement workshop where the walls sweat more than the men inside and the air tastes like metal. This is the world of the medieval alchemist, and you've just become one, not a famous one. Not yet. You're still wiping soot from your nose, still organizing jars that clink ominously when you move them too fast. Some are labeled, some aren't. Some glow faintly in the dark, which you try not to think about. You've got no real paycheck, no apprentices, and certainly no divine revelations yet. What you do have is curiosity and a cabinet full of things that could kill you, blind you, or maybe transmute your soul. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your local time and location in the comments. It's oddly fun to see who's drifting off to tales of sulfur and shattered glass at 3:06 a.m. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lift the lid off a small iron box. Inside, powdered cinnabar. Bright red. Beautiful. Toxic. You dip your finger in just a little and sprinkle it over a heated stone. A hiss. A waft of orange smoke. Your eyes sting. You blink. Welcome to your new profession. Alchemy in the Middle Ages isn't just proto-chemistry. It's part faith, part fraud, part fever dream. And you're standing right at the intersection of all three. Your bench is cluttered with crucibles, alembics, tongs, and flasks. A dying candle flickers next to a thick tome written in Latin, Greek, and symbols that don't correspond to any known alphabet. You're not entirely sure if you're making a potion, a bomb, or a love charm. Possibly all three. And the smoke never leaves. There's always something boiling, sizzling, or whispering. Yes, whispering. You chalk that one up to poor ventilation and the lingering effects of lead exposure. Quirky fact, most medieval alchemists worked in semi-secrecy, not because they were doing anything illegal, but because they were afraid of being called sorcerers, heretics, or worse, charlatans. The line between a respected philosopher and a neighborhood warlock, very, very thin. Today you're experimenting with something called vitriol oil. It's supposed to purify base metals. It's also capable of melting skin. You know this because yesterday you dropped some on your foot. You still haven't told anyone. You've wrapped it in cloth, dipped in rose water, because that's what the manual said. The pain is a 7 out of 10. You tell yourself this is the price of pursuing divine truth. Historians still argue whether medieval alchemists believed they were truly uncovering universal laws, or just trying not to starve by promising gold that never arrived. Most likely, it was both. You scribble something in your notebook, Thursday, sulfur did not speak. Mercury, still restless. Basilisk egg, maybe a toad. You underline, maybe a toad, twice. The basement rumbles slightly. Not an earthquake, just someone walking overhead. The local bishop rents out this place on the cheap, as long as you don't make noise or blow holes in the floor again. You step back from the flame, reaching for a piece of green glass. It's slick with condensation. You're trying to capture the essence of silver. You don't know what that means yet, but the recipe calls for crushed mirror goat's blood and 2 hours of chanting. So you chant, softly, to yourself, in a language no one taught you. Quirky tidbit: many alchemists believed that true transmutation required more than physical materials. It demanded spiritual purity. Some fasted for weeks, practiced celibacy, or prayed for visions. You mostly just skip breakfast and hope that counts. The session ends when your candle dies. You're not finished, but your lungs are. The air feels heavier than usual. Your head pounds. You think it's from the fumes, but it could also be from the dreams you've been having, that one with the golden river and the screaming plants. You jot it down. Might be relevant later. You crawl up the stairs, each step sticky with some resin you spilled last week. You tell yourself you'll clean it. You won't. The sky outside is black now. The town's asleep. But your hands are still trembling from the work, from the chemicals, from the realization that despite the pain and the mystery and the slowly blackening fingernails, you want to go back down tomorrow. Because something's down there. You're sure of it. Something just waiting to be discovered. And you'll find it, even if it kills you. You wake up coughing. Your throat feels like you swallowed soot. Your teeth ache. Your fingers twitch before your eyes open, searching for tools that aren't there. You slept with your gloves on again. They reek of vinegar and sulfur, and your pillow now has a crust of something. You don't ask. The dream is still in your head, molten gold flowing uphill. A voice in the fire whispering your name backward. You shake it off, rinse your face with rainwater caught in a cracked jug, and descend. Back to the basement, back to the bubbling. The door creaks with the same pitch as yesterday. It almost sounds like a warning, but you're too far in now. You're a seeker, an explorer, or depending on who you ask, a diluted danger to yourself and others. Today's gold transmutation. You're going to turn lead into gold. Yes, really. Again. You've tried it 47 times already. Results so far, 47 piles of hot gray failure. But today's different, because you have a new ingredient. Dragon's blood. Not real dragon's blood. Obviously, it's a deep red resin from a tree that grows somewhere far away, maybe India, maybe the Isle of Serpents. No one agrees. But alchemists agree on this. It looks magical. And in alchemy, that's half the work. You crush it with the flat end of a brass spoon, mix it with vinegar, and swirl it counterclockwise 3 times. Clockwise was a disaster last time. The stain still hasn't come off the ceiling. Fun fact, some medieval alchemists truly believed that visual resemblance meant functional power. If something looked golden, it might help create gold. If it looked like blood, it might heal blood. That's why you keep a small orange mushroom on your bench, just in case. The crucible heats up. You drop in powdered lead. The mix hisses, and nothing happens. Again. But this time you notice something tiny flakes rising in the smoke. You lean in way too close. They sparkle. Your heart skips. Could this be it? Historians still argue whether anyone ever truly believed they could make gold, or if it was just a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment. Your lungs don't care. They just want you to stop inhaling molten lead. You sit back, dizzy, elated, disappointed. Welcome to the cycle of alchemy. Your hands are blackened now, not from soot, but from something deeper, something staining, the kind of residue that doesn't wash off no matter how much you scrub with vinegar, salt, or ash. You reach for your book, not your regular one, the forbidden one, the one you found hidden behind a brick years ago, the one with no title, no known author, and 3 pages that have been scratched out by someone in absolute panic. You flip to a dog-eared page titled De Rebus Aureis on Golden Matters. The recipe is maddening. It references ingredients that don't exist, or maybe they do, just in different languages, different metaphors. One tear from the moon, the breath of a dying flame, the silence between 2 bells. But it gives you one actionable step. Begin with failure, which you feel you've absolutely nailed. Quirky tidbit. A few real historical alchemists did claim success, like Nicholas Flamel, who supposedly created the Philosopher's Stone. His tomb is real. His gold, not so much. You record today's results. Attempt number 48. Lead. Remained lead. Dragon's blood smells excellent. Saw sparkles. Possibly a hallucination. Definitely progress. You underline definitely 3 times. Then you light another flame. Because you're going to try again. Maybe with egg yolk this time. Maybe with that green stone you found near the well. Maybe with your own fingernail. It sounds ridiculous. But so did splitting the atom. And yet, here we are. Even failure teaches. Even the wrong path leaves footprints. So you follow the smoke. You chase the shimmer. And when your hands tremble too much to measure powders, you hold them over the flame, not to warm them, but to see if they still cast a shadow. So far they do, but only just. There's a knock at the trapdoor. 3 soft raps. 1 heavy thud. You freeze, mid-stir, your fingers sticky with egg white and powdered bone. The room smells like overcooked wine and moss, an accidental byproduct of yesterday's failed elixir of memory. The air shimmers faintly, as if embarrassed to be breathing the same fumes as you. The knock again. Thump, thump. It's your apprentice. He's late. Again. You swing the door open, and there he is, lean, pale, blinking at the torchlight, like he's forgotten what color is. His name is Lucian, probably. You're fairly sure he gave you a fake name when he showed up with a busted satchel and a half-burned recommendation from some equally unhinged alchemist 3 towns over. Lucian's eyes are wide. His hands shake. You immediately know something's wrong. Then you notice it. He's glowing, not metaphorically. His fingernails have a faint bluish shimmer. His breath clouds in the air, even though the basement is warm. You squint. What did you touch? He tries to answer, but all that comes out is a cough, a wet, crackling thing that smells like bad vinegar and soapstone. You guide him to the corner stool. He wobbles like a cat that's been caught in a storm drain. His skin is clammy. His teeth chatter. He hands you a pouch made of animal hide. Inside a single vial. It's wrapped in linen. The stopper is sealed with wax. "What's this?" you ask. He shrugs, which you interpret as, "I stole it from a monk who didn't know what he had." Quirky fact. Some historical alchemists believed that certain substances needed to be harvested, accidentally taken, without intention or ceremony, because the universe only revealed its secrets when no one was watching. You open the vial. It's dark inside, not black, dark like light is hiding from it, like something in there doesn't want to be seen. Lucien watches, with eyes like saucers. You dip a copper wire into the liquid and hold it to a flame. The flame turns green, then purple, then silence. Not a pop, not a hiss, just complete eerie stillness. Historians still argue whether early alchemists actually stumbled on elements we now recognize like phosphorus or antimony without understanding what they were. Some notes describe glowing liquids, spontaneous fire, or materials that resisted rot for years. Lucien's glow isn't fading. You lay him down and check his eyes. They reflect the candlelight like a cat's. He mutters something. One word. It sounds like dissolve, or maybe resolve. You're not sure which one's worse. You give him a draft of chamomile and quicksilver, an old detox remedy from a Flemish grimoire. It probably won't help, but it's something to do while you panic. Then you return to the vial. You're tempted to drink it, not all of it, just a drop, because your hands have stopped shaking, because you're tired of failure, because maybe Lucien's suffering is just part of the process. You hold the dropper over your tongue, then pause. You remember what happened to your last apprentice, the one who turned blue, the one who stopped breathing after trying to distill lightning in a flask. You throw the drop onto a bed of salt instead. It hisses, turns black, and carves a spiral into the wood beneath it. That's new. You write it down in your notes. Vial from Lucian. Liquid repels sound. Flame shifted colors, possibly cursed. Apprentice glowing unclear prognosis. You glance at Lucian again. He's stopped twitching. His chest rises, falls, rises. For now, you wipe your hands on your robe. They're sticky again. You don't remember what with, but they shine faintly under candlelight. You try not to notice. You wake up to scratching, not mice, not rats. Something bigger, something deliberate. It's coming from the shelf, the one behind the lead curtain where you keep things not safe enough for labels. You move slowly, candle in one hand, tongs in the other, The scratching stops the moment you look directly at it. Of course it does. You pull the curtain aside. Everything seems normal, more or less. The bone powder hasn't moved. The flask labeled "Regret Distilled" is still sealed. The jar with the salamander tail and the iron nail inside still humming faintly, which is comforting. But there's something new, a small wooden box. You don't remember putting it there. It's the size of a loaf of bread, sealed with pitch and etched with unfamiliar symbols, not your usual collection of hermetic squiggles. These look older, like someone scratched them with a fingernail or a tooth. You open it. Inside is a glove, leather, fitted, stained a deep, greasy black as though it absorbed every awful thing ever spilled on it. You slip it on, and your fingers go numb instantly. Not the cold kind of numb, the floating kind, as if your fingers no longer report to you, but to something higher or lower. Jury's out. You flex once, twice. Then something strange. Your crucibles begin to arrange themselves. Not dramatically, just a subtle shift like magnets aligning. Mortar and pestle slide slightly to the left. A flask nudges closer to the flame. The pages of your open notebook flip to a diagram you don't remember drawing. It's a perfect circle. Inside the outline of a human hand, gloved. Mainstream historians will tell you that medieval alchemy was just messy chemistry with Latin captions. But you're starting to understand something else. Intention has weight. Thought shapes matter. Maybe even rewrites it. Quirky tidbit. One lesser-known belief among occult alchemists was the concept of the obedient element, that certain compounds, if handled with the right attitude and glove, would begin to self-organize toward transmutation. You take off the glove, and the room slumps, like it's disappointed. You set it aside and reach for the bellows. The fire is dying. Again. You pump. Once. Twice. Then a sudden whoosh, and the entire room floods with light. The flames surge unnaturally, tall green and blue like summer lightning. In that moment, the glass flask beside it cracks, and from inside smoke screams. Not a hiss, not a whistle. A scream. Thin, sharp, and human-like. You drop the bellows. The smoke curls into a shape. A figure. It's gone in seconds. But you saw it. It looked like Lucien. You turned to check the boy who's still curled in the corner, under a wool cloak, trembling like a violin string. His glow has faded, but his lips are moving again. Whispering, "Don't let it out." You don't ask what it is. You already have theories. You grab a quill and scrawl. New glove, maybe artifact. Crucibles moved independently. Glass emitted humanoid shriek. Lucian warning against opening something, possibly related to Box 3, still sealed. You cap the inkwell. It sizzles slightly. Normal. You eye the rest of your equipment with renewed suspicion. That lead-lined goblet. Was it always sweating? That scale, has it been shifting numbers on its own? Historians still argue whether alchemists truly believed in animate matter, the idea that Some tools could remember, respond, even resent. But you're starting to develop opinions. You return to the glove. It's twitching, just a little, like it's dreaming. You put it back in the box. Seal it. Mark it with chalk. Do not open again, unless desperate. You sit down, light a new candle, and breathe. Your fingers still tingle, and your lab smells like burned honey and iron. You take that as a good sign, because here in this place, nothing normal ever means progress. You wake to scratching again, only this time it's coming from inside your gloves. You rip them off in a panic. Nothing. Your hands are slick with sweat. Under the lantern, your fingernails shimmer faintly, green, maybe, or silver. Or maybe you've been awake too long. It's hard to tell. You dunk your hands in the vinegar basin, ignoring the sting. The acid bites at scrapes you don't remember getting. There's a tickle between your knuckles. You pull your hands out. Tiny blisters. Lovely. The same kind that bloomed across Lucian's collarbone when he first inhaled that unknown vapor. You make a note to test your breathing cloth for leaks. Again. You reach for fresh gloves, but they don't fit. They're tighter now, because your hands have changed. Swollen, palms slightly darkened, skin too smooth, too taut, like it's been lacquered. You flex. You still have sensation, but it's muted, as if someone turned the volume down on your nerves. You test grip strength by picking up the iron pestle. It feels light, much too light. You log the change, day 52. Gloves reject fit. Skin slick odor faintly metallic. Reflexes intact. Pressure sensitivity decreased. Possible symptom of long-term mercury exposure. Mainstream scholars agree mercury poisoning was common among alchemists. The tremors, the memory loss, the emotional swings. They called it madness. But you're beginning to think it's just evolution, a necessary shedding of soft, useless stability. You reach for the bell jar with the sealed parchment inside. The one labeled Formula 9, lapis, begins in pain. You've never dared try it. Until now. Lucian watches from the corner, his face paler than a candle stub, but alert. He's whispering equations, the same ones you dreamed about last night. That's either magic or a shared delusion. Either way, it's progress. You open the scroll. Inside a diagram, a man, arms outstretched, veins branching like rivers, but labeled not with Latin terms. Know something stranger. Symbols that look like bones and insects and stars collapsing in on themselves. The first ingredient, vitriol. You have some. In the cabinet beside the dried frog and the crushed garnet. You place the flask on the burner and begin the long stir, always clockwise. This time you've learned your lesson. The fumes rise, bitter sharp. Your eyes water. You think of the old master, the one who used to cough blood into a velvet handkerchief and swore he was closer than anyone to the stone. They buried him with his tongue missing, not out of cruelty, out of fear he might say something dangerous. Historians still argue whether some alchemists deliberately altered their bodies, consuming trace poisons, rubbing metals into their skin, trying to make themselves more than human. You used to scoff. Now your hands gleam faintly in the dark. The vitriol bubbles. You add the sliver of lead, followed by a pinch of your own hair, just to see. The mix turns from green to gray to purple, then splits. Not explodes, splits. The liquid separates violently, like a crowd recoiling from something blasphemous. You bottle the reaction. Label it cautiously. Phase 1. Afraid. Lucian scribbles something on the wall with chalk. The skin knows first. You don't know what that means. You don't ask. You just nod. Quirky tidbit, one 14th century alchemist, known only as the inkless monk, claimed that the body could be trained to feel metals, not just handle them, but sense their intent, like a dowser senses water. He died during a demonstration involving heated tin. You're starting to believe him. You open your window for the first time in days. A mistake. The fresh air stings like regret. You close it again. Down here the world makes more sense. The rules are stricter, stranger, but fair. Pain and progress out. Your hands flex silent. Gloves forgotten. You've stopped needing them. You've stopped sleeping. Not on purpose. It just drifted away, like steam off a beaker, disappearing before you noticed it was gone. Your body still lies down, sometimes, but your mind keeps working, whirring, solving, watching equations dance behind your eyes like constellations. You see reactions before they happen, smell metals before the jars are opened. You're either evolving or breaking. Lucian hasn't spoken in 2 days. Not words, anyway. He hums now, a single high note over and over again. It syncs with the drip of condensation from the ceiling. You suspect he's mapping time with sound, or staving off something worse. You hum with him, because it helps. On the table, your most dangerous idea yet. You call it mirror salt. You scraped it from the edge of a failed purification flask. It shouldn't exist, just ash and leftover wine reduction. But when it crystallized, it reflected your face. Not perfectly. Wrong. It showed you smiling even when you weren't. You've stored it in a lead-lined jar ever since. But today you unscrew the lid. The smell hits instantly, sweet and burnt like candied blood. You pinch a grain and drop it into heated aqua fortis. The liquid doesn't boil. It sinks. The whole mixture contracts, curling inward, like it's afraid. You lean close, squinting through the fumes, and there you are, reflected again, but not today's you. A version of you older, paler, wearing a red robe you've never owned and a necklace made of teeth. Hugh opens his mouth. You stagger back. Lucien stops humming. Mainstream historians, of course, would say this is fatigue, alchemical psychosis, delirium from fumes, and self-starvation. But what do they know? They never stayed up 40 hours trying to trap heat in a bell jar with crushed quartz and desperation. They never talk to their reflection. You cork the mixture and label it self. Then you go to the wall, the one where you chart every failed attempt at transmutation. Dozens of symbols, dozens of crossed-out days. But something new today. A dot, perfectly round, drawn in chalk by someone not you. Lucien, maybe. Or maybe the reflection. You don't erase it. You pull down your oldest notebook, the one bound in dark leather with the rusted clasp. You flip past the early nonsense, how to make soap that smells like basil, how to convince vinegar to taste like wine. Then, the first real experiment. Attempt 1 gold, from egg yolk and crushed brick. Result, orange paste, mildly explosive. Good color. You smile. That was a good day. You still have the scar on your eyebrow. You reach the final page. It's blank. Except it isn't. Under the right angle, the candlelight reveals an indentation, a pressure from a quill, not yet dipped in ink. And you can read it. You trace the lines with your fingers. The stone is not a stone. The fire is not flame. You must unmake to begin. Historians still argue what exactly the lapis philosophorum was meant to symbolize. Wealth, immortality, enlightenment. Or maybe something more intimate, control, perhaps over the uncontrollable. You sit back, suddenly very cold. Lucien is gone. No there, in the shadows, standing but not walking, just floating slightly off the floor. He turns his head toward you slowly, smiles. You do not scream. You write this instead. Day 54. Mirror salt. Initiated psychic fracture. Lucien untethered from floor. My body functions, but brain continues independent operations. This may be success. Quirky fact. One fringe theory suggested that the final stage of transmutation required the alchemist himself to dissolve. That to create perfect matter, you must first surrender the imperfection that is identity. You lean forward, touch your reflection in the bottle. This time it touches you back. You've stopped using your name, not out loud, not in your notes, not even in your head. Because it's wrong now. It clings to you like a wet robe, heavy, itchy, and completely irrelevant. The person who started this work is no longer the one stirring the crucible, and that's okay. Today, you melt glass with your hands, not a metaphor. You reached for the alembic, and it sagged bent like taffy in your grip, warm and pliable. It snapped back to shape when you released it. Your palms bear no burns. Lucien watched, still floating, still humming. He sometimes tilts at strange angles now, like the room is spinning around him, but forgot to bring gravity. You measure the air, thicker, denser. Something has settled. You turn to the cabinet of failed metals, the drawer of lead-laced, arsenic-tainted mistakes. Normally you avoid it. Too dangerous. Too many fumes. But today they don't bother you. You pick up a failed nugget. Chalky. Heavy. Mostly regret. It purrs in your hand. You blink. Once. Twice. The nugget now has veins. Not blood veins. Gold veins. Tiny ones running like cracks through its core, glinting faintly. You slice it open with a glass scalpel. Inside, not gold, not lead. Something else. It shines like moonlight on oil. Historians still argue whether some alchemists genuinely altered atomic structure. Modern science would say no. But modern science isn't here watching a stone bleed light across your table. You bottle it. Label, maybe Lucien writes on the wall again, this time in reverse Latin. Ut corpus, fiat, lux. Let the body become light. You try it out loud. The room dims. No, not dims, folds. Corners of the chamber tilt slightly as if the universe itself hiccuped. Your candle flickers, then splits into 2 flames, then 3, then none. Darkness. You don't panic. You exhale, and the light comes back. You laugh, a soft, surprised chuckle that sounds foreign in your throat. It's the first time you've laughed in weeks, maybe months. You've forgotten how long you've been here. But this feels like progress. You pull the lead curtain aside again. The glove is gone. In its place, a small note scrawled in trembling script. Too late for gloves now. No signature. You walk to your notes. You read yesterday's entries. They've changed. Not rewritten, rephrased. Softer wording, calmer voice. As if a version of you with better manners has been editing your thoughts while you slept or while you dissolved. One entry reads, perhaps the stone is not an object, but a verb. You sit with that. Then the mirror, the salt mirror. It's cracked now, webbing from the center out like frost on a window. But inside, something else. You see a hallway, a door. You reach toward it. The reflection pulls back. Smart, quirky tidbit. Some early alchemists believed that mirrors could act as gateways if infused with enough human intention and reflective metal. They warned never to touch your twin in the glass lest your soul get swapped. You note that down, carefully. Your fingers twitch again, not from exhaustion, but from longing to keep going, to open the box beneath the floorboards, the one you buried under ash and forgotten teeth. You swore never to use it. You light 3 candles and trace the protective triangle. You break the seal. Inside a heart. Not yours. Not Lucien's. Wrapped in wax cloth soaked in mercury and pierced with 3 iron nails. You don't remember preserving it, but the handwriting on the cloth is yours. The heart pulses. Just once. You whisper, I am ready. And the air changes. Lucien's hum slows, then stops. He turns his head, smiles, sinks through the floorboards like mist. Gone. You don't move, you just wait. Something's coming, and you want it to. You stop counting the days. Numbers feel useless now. Time has thickened like honey left in the cold too long. You still light candles, Still change the water, still pretend to clean the beakers. But it's ritual, not necessity. The true work has outgrown that. Your fingertips glow faintly in the dark, not from heat, from something deeper. There's a hum beneath your skin, not a sound, a sensation. Like the world is whispering just under your pulse, and you're beginning to understand the language. You return to the heart, the one under the floorboards. It hasn't moved again, but it's warmer. You pick it up gently, reverently, the way one might hold a dying god or a newborn secret. It doesn't resist. It doesn't need to. You unwrap it. 3 iron nails, slick with old mercury, slip from the wax cloth and land on your workbench with a sound like bells tolling underwater. You roll up your sleeves and prepare a crucible bath. Today is for transference. The books warned against it. Too risky, too permanent, too unknown, perfect. You dissolve the nails in aqua regia. The fumes claw at your throat, but your body no longer flinches. Then, the heart sliced carefully into quarters and dusted with powdered garnet, each piece lowered into its own solution. You stir clockwise, then counterclockwise, then stillness. The liquid turns black and sings, not metaphorically. It emits a high, pure note, one that vibrates through your teeth and fingertips and spine. The sound has weight, and you feel it settling in your bones like memory. You bottle the pieces separately. Label 4-4. Soul historians still argue whether soul transference was ever more than metaphor, but they never heard fluid hum in perfect fifths, never saw glass sweat in fear, never watched a boy walk backward into the wall and vanish. Yes, Lucien is gone now, truly gone. He left a small note in your ledger, just one word: thanks. You keep it tucked in your robe, as a reminder, or a warning, quirky tidbit. In one obscure 15th century grimoire, there's mention of a rite called Echo's Heart. The ritual claimed to split a person's essence into musical tones which could then be preserved in solution. No recipe was provided, just the phrase, "If it weeps, you're too late." Yours didn't weep. Yours sang. You stare into the bottles. The black liquid pulses softly, like breath. You write day, partial success, separation achieved, essence intact, subject L, fully dissolved, emotional response mild. You put the bottles on the highest shelf, not for safety, for reverence. They feel like company. The glove is back, not where you left it. It's on your workbench, this time upright, fingers curled, as if gesturing to something behind you. You turn. The mirror, the crack has spread. Inside the hallway is clearer, the door at the end. It's open now. You lean in. A breeze escapes the glass, carrying the scent of ash and rosemary, and something that smells distinctly like your mother's garden, the one that burned when you were 8. You haven't thought about that in years. The glass shudders. You do too. Then 3 words, whisper into your left ear. You're almost through. You don't turn. You don't need to. You speak aloud. Let it be done. The mirror stops shaking. You light your last candle and open your final notebook. The one you swore you'd only write in once everything changed. You inscribe, "I am no longer the vessel. I am the fire." And the ink writes back. You wake up inside a symbol, not in a bed, not on the floor, inside a circle drawn perfectly in powdered bone and bloodroot, with 7 overlapping sigils etched into the stone beneath you. You don't remember falling asleep. You don't remember drawing the circle. But your hands are red, not blood red, not bruised, just wrong, stained with something deeper. You flex your fingers, and the symbols respond a faint glow at first, then movement. Lines twitch like nervous veins. The air thickens. The candlelight turns the color of dried teeth. You do not panic. This is expected. The final phase was always going to be improvisational. On the bench, the bottles containing Lucien's soul essence tremble slightly. A low harmonic hum pulses from the glass, syncopated rhythmic, like a warning or a welcome. You cross the circle. Nothing stops you. A sign, perhaps, that you've earned passage. You reach the mirror. The door within it is wide open now. You can see through. The hallway leads not into a house, but into a vast, dark plain, an endless horizon of stars scattered across soil made of ash. The wind moves sideways. The sky is an eye. Lucien is there, or something that wears his face. He smiles, but the smile stretches just a little too far, and his shadow doesn't follow him. He beckons. You reach forward. The glass does not resist. It ripples. Mainstream historians don't believe in dimensional bleeding. They'll tell you alchemists were working toward physical goals, gold elixirs, eternal life. But fringe scholars, those dismissed as mystics or madmen, spoke often of the veil of second substance, a plane between matter and meaning. They claimed mirrors were its skin. You step through. It feels like cold jelly. It clings to your chest, then peels away in long, sticky tendrils. You're not in your lab anymore. You're in the other lab, the one you sketched once in a dream, where the shelves are taller than houses and the ceiling moves like water. The beakers float, the books whisper, and every tool knows your name, your new name. You walk forward. Lucien, or his echo, follows at a respectful distance, humming low. You find your station, your crucible, and a lump of something you've never seen before, dark, translucent, and humming. You touch it. It shudders. You know instantly what it is. Half of the stone. Yours. You kneel. Begin the rites. You add powdered mirror salt, a shred of your old robe, the last of the heart fluid. The crucible flashes, then darkens, then opens. Yes, opens, like a flower, like a mouth. Inside a sphere, not gold, not flesh, something in between, It pulses with your heartbeat. You swallow hard and reach in. Quirky fact. In the writings of Zosimos of Panopolis, there is mention of the egg that eats itself, a mythical stage of alchemy where the creator must offer the entire self into the reaction not as a martyr, but as a participant. The egg devours identity and hatches truth. You lift the sphere. It vibrates. You press it to your chest. It sinks in. There is no pain, just absence. The world winks out, reboots. You stand in your lab again, not the other lab, the real one. Or is it you can't tell anymore? The lines have blurred. You look at your hands. They are clean, perfect, glowing faintly. The bottles are still, the glove is gone. Lucien is nowhere. But his hum remains in the walls, in the glass, in your bones. You smile, not because it's over, but because you finally understand. You don't eat anymore, not because you forgot, because you no longer need to. Food became irrelevant somewhere between the fourth transference and the mirrored breach. Your body, now something adjacent to flesh, hums with quiet equilibrium. It feeds on vibration, memory, and intent. And tea. You still drink tea out of habit, and because the steam reminds you of breath. You sit at your bench, not to work, but to observe. The tools rearrange themselves overnight. The crucibles now rest in a spiral formation. The beakers have aligned by volume, not function. The pestle has rolled exactly 33 centimeters from its bowl and stopped. A line of salt divides the room diagonally. None of it is random. Nothing is anymore. You pick up your notebook. It's full, front to back. Even the margins, even the blank pages. You flip to the final spread. There's a drawing of you, or the idea of you, kneeling in front of a swirling column of ash. Your face is featureless. Your hands are covered in script. Around your feet, tiny bottles arranged in a circle. You did not draw this, but your handwriting labels it completion theoretical. Below a note in another hand. To reach the end, remove the middle. Historians still argue over the last known writings of several alchemists who vanished in the late 15th century. Some described similar drawings. Some left encoded recipes. A few inscribed their final thoughts onto lead plates and dropped them into wells. One even tattooed his thesis on his own back before walking into a swamp. None returned. You touch the edge of the drawing. It's warm. Then a knock, not at the door, from inside the wall. 3 soft raps evenly spaced. You answer without speaking. The candle flickers once, then flares green, and she steps through. The woman from your dream. Tall, cloaked in smoke with no visible mouth. Only a mirrored plate where her face should be. She glides, not walks, and her hands leave traces of frost on everything she touches. She reaches toward your bench, lifts the heart flask, nods, and places something else in its place. A feather black, heavy, slightly warm. You know what to do. You crush it in the mortar. Mix with mirror salt and a single tear, the first you've shed in weeks. The result is a paste that smells like lightning. You smear it across your forehead, and everything stops, literally. The candle flames freeze. The air becomes syrup. Your heartbeat becomes thunder. And then you're elsewhere, inside a memory, not your own. A battlefield lit by auroras, men screaming in Latin, a fire that burns backward. In the center, a figure with your voice, but not your body, holding the sphere, wielding it like a lantern, and behind them, 7 doors, spinning like a wheel. You blink, back in your lab. The candle has resumed. The woman is gone, but her frost remains. On the mirror, the crack is gone. It's smooth again, a perfect surface. Your reflection looks at you, then winks. Quirky tidbit. Some Renaissance alchemists believed that reflections could store alternate versions of the self, like backups, waiting for activation. They advised against prolonged mirror gazing for fear of reversal entanglement, in which the reflection walks away and you stay trapped. You write day. Mirror reset. External confirmation achieved. Encounter with Entity 7. Exchange successful. Emotional response, reverence. Then you sit, hands folded, waiting, because now the work truly begins. You no longer blink, not because you're trying to seem intense or ethereal or vaguely sinister, but because blinking feels inefficient now. The eyelid movement interrupts the stream of symbols you keep seeing in the corners of your vision, symbols that vanish if you so much as flinch. You don't want to miss any more of them. Your eyes adjust to the dark without complaint. They have grown accustomed to rooms that breathe flames that move sideways and shadows that whisper full sentences in archaic dialects. This morning your shadow told you a joke. It was oddly funny. You laughed. The lab laughed with you. Every glass surface vibrated with a gentle titter. You're not alone anymore. The lab is aware. It began subtly. A book opening just before your hand reached for it, a door unlocking on its own when you were still 6 steps away. Now it rearranges the shelves based on your intentions, shelving ingredients you haven't even requested yet. Today, it gives you a gift, a single strand of hair curled around a quill that wasn't there yesterday. Lucien's hair. Not his now. Not really. You lift it with tongs and lay it across a page. It begins to write. No ink, no pressure, just hair scrawling across parchment like a spider dipped in memory. The message, he still sees you. Don't stop now. Mainstream historians scoff at the idea of haunted laboratories. But fringe scholars, especially those exiled for excessive literalism, describe workshops as conscious zones once the alchemist reaches enough recursive intent. Essentially, when you believe hard enough that the lab is listening, it starts listening. You believe plenty. The books rearrange again. this time into a spiral. At the center, the lead plate, the one you swore never to touch. It wasn't there yesterday. You reach for it. It resists, sticky with age and memory. When you finally lift it, you see your old name etched faintly beneath the corrosion. The name you discarded in Section 7. It blinks at you, then fades. Underneath a phrase appears in fresh etching. Unbirth begins when you accept reversal. You take that as a prompt. You begin boiling water in reverse order, salt fire, then vessel. You crush dried ink, mix with powdered bone, stir counterclockwise while reciting your thesis backward. You chant each footstep you took yesterday in reverse. The potion reacts. It smells like forgotten arguments and cinnamon. You bottle it. Label pre. You, Lucian's voice returns, but only in questions. Soft ones. Do you remember the orchard? You do. Barely. An orchard that may never have existed, filled with fruit that dripped color instead of juice. Another whisper. Why did you bury the teeth? You don't know. Yet. But you write the question down. Quirky tidbit. Several alchemical texts describe memory extraction as a side effect of soul-parting rituals. You don't lose your memories. They get stored somewhere else, often in objects, sometimes in reflections, occasionally in other people. You glance at the mirror again. It shows your back, not your face. You don't turn around. Instead, you speak, "I'm listening," and the mirror answers in your voice. Then don't look away. The temperature drops 3 degrees. You smile. The lab flickers. Not the light, the structure. The shelves briefly turn inside out. The floor becomes sky. The candle hangs upside down, burning into a pool of shadow instead of wax. Then, stability. You write, day null. Lab alignment complete. Identity untethered. Mood optimistic. You turn to the final page of your old notebook and write your name. The new one. The true one. The one you haven't yet spoken aloud. It hums on the page. The candle bows. The mirror waits. You're almost ready. The mirror opens itself at dawn. You didn't ask. You didn't even look at it. But it knew. You wake to find the glass rippling quietly, the way pond water does when something enormous swims just beneath the surface. There's no sound, only pressure. A hush that pushes gently against your ears like a memory trying to get in. You approach barefoot. Your feet make no noise. The floor has stopped acknowledging sound. Inside the mirror, not a reflection. Not the other lab. A room made of ribs. Massive, curved ivory structures arching above you, like the belly of a sleeping titan. The walls pulse faintly wet with condensation. A single iron table stands in the center, and on it, a box. Just a box. You step through. The air inside smells like cold breath and fermented honey. The bones twitch slightly as you walk beneath them, like they're dreaming. You reach the box. It's locked with 7 latches each, shaped like a different stage of your past handwriting. You unlock them by remembering how it felt to believe things, to believe in sunlight, in sugar, in music that doesn't rearrange your bones. Each memory tightens something in your chest. But the box opens. Inside, your childhood tooth, your father's final button, a feather from a bird that never existed, and Lucien's left eye. It blinks at you, you blink back. Mainstream historians tend to ignore what's called the reliquary syndrome, the strange habit alchemists had of preserving deeply personal, seemingly useless items. But fringe theorists suggest that these objects were emotional anchors, preventing total ego decomposition in long experiments. Without them, practitioners were said to dissolve not physically, but narratively, forgotten by the world, unwritten from their own story. You gather the relics and place them in your robe. They rattle gently, like coins or ghosts. Lucian's eye hums. The room of ribs sighs, and the walls begin to bleed. Not in a gory way, more like they're leaking red ink, staining the bone crawling toward your boots. You understand. Time's up. You step back through the mirror. The lab is not the same. The ceiling is now velvet. The walls brushed metal. The candles burn blue. But your bench remains. So does the book. It's not yours. Black leather, no spine, opens from the center. Inside a list. You recognize the handwriting. Lucian's again. But also yours. Every other word is one you've spoken aloud this month. You trace a finger down the list. Each line ends with a symbol, one you saw once, in a fresco beneath a burned abbey. A symbol that meant completion, or possibly silence. Hard to say. Scholars still argue about it. You add a line, unwritten does not mean unmade. Then close the book. The mirror shatters. Softly. It doesn't explode, just collapses inward, folding into itself like a sigh until all that remains is a shard. One perfect triangle of silvered glass. You place it in your palm, and it dissolves. The reflection doesn't vanish. It merges. You are now your own echo. Quirky fact. One forgotten alchemist once claimed the mirror was always the subject. We were just the frame. You never understood that until now. You clean the bench, organize the tools. The lab feels quiet, not empty, just satisfied. There's one last thing to do. The wall glows. A new doorway appears, not mirrored, not cracked. Wooden, ordinary. You open it. Inside your first lab. Dusty, small. Smells like burnt time and early failure. You see your old notebooks, your first gloves, your first mistake still etched into the stone. You smile and step in because now finally you're ready to begin. The door closes behind you with a click that echoes far louder than it should. You're back in the first lab. But something's different. The dust isn't just undisturbed, it's organized, patterned, swirled across every surface in spirals concentric loops, and long curling symbols you now realize match the ones from the mirror, the sphere, the humming in Lucian's glass lung. These symbols have been following you for a long time, or leading. You step carefully around a fallen alembic. You remember knocking it over years ago when you thought alchemy was just about turning lead into gold, and you hadn't yet learned that gold was usually a metaphor for disintegration with dignity. The bench creaks under your weight. You run your hand across the surface. A groove in the wood has deepened, worn down by years of elbows, spilled tinctures, and frustration. It remembers you. You whisper, "I'm back." A single candle flickers to life, then another, then the entire room inhales, not with sound, with presence. You open your oldest notebook, the one you thought lost. The spine is cracked, the pages brittle, but the ink is fresh, rewritten in your current hand, even though this book was sealed in a drawer for over a decade. You read the first entry, goal, make something real. And underneath in a different color, goal, remember who I was before the fire. You turn the page. Recipes, notes, dream fragments, and then a sketch. Your hand, holding a vial. Inside the vial, your own heartbeat bottled. You don't remember drawing this, but it looks right. Historians still argue whether certain alchemists experienced recursive timelines looping back into their own origins after completing the great work. Some records appear duplicated across centuries. A few even claim to have met themselves, older or younger, with matching scars. You lean back in your chair. It doesn't squeak anymore. You smile, then freeze, because something else is in the room. Not a ghost, not a shadow. Something quieter, a presence behind you, not malevolent, not friendly, just expectant. You turn slowly, and there you are, 15 years younger, covered in soot, eyes wide, hopeful, angry, desperate, still thinking the work was about glory or immortality, still clinging to Lucian's approval, still scared. You stare at each other. Then the younger you says, "Did we finish it?" You reply, "We started it." They nod, grimly, and fade. Not disappear, fade. Like a story you've told too many times. Quirky tidbit. The term prima materia wasn't just used for base substances. It was sometimes used in mystic circles to describe the self before identity. The raw, angry frightened you that hadn't yet been boiled into shape. Some say the hardest part of the work is facing that first version again. You return to the notebook. On the final page, completion is never finished, only absorbed. You underline it, then draw a circle. Inside it, a door. You step back. The drawing glows faintly and becomes real. Yes, the notebook grows a door. It creaks open. Behind it, stairs, spiraling down. You hesitate for a moment, then grab the candle and descend. The steps are warm. The deeper you go, the more the air hums, not with heat or sound, but with recognition. You're being watched. No, welcomed. You reach the bottom. There is no room, only darkness, and the outline of another mirror. This one does not reflect, it absorbs. And as you step forward, the surface ripples. Your face does not appear. Only the words, "You are now the lab." You nod and walk through. You pass through the mirror with no sensation, no tug, no pull, not even a shimmer of resistance. One step and the world folds neatly behind you, like turning a page in a book that no longer wants to be read. You're somewhere new, or maybe very old. It's difficult to tell. The floor beneath your feet is glass, but warm. The walls curve gently, like the inside of a bell. The ceiling pulses faintly, with light cycling through tones too subtle to name. You reach for a surface that isn't there, only to discover that you are glowing faintly along the edges. Your fingers cast gentle shadows, but they float an inch above the ground. Welcome to the final lab, the one inside the work. You are not alone here. There are others, not people, not anymore. Echoes, perhaps. Shapes made of voice and gesture. Silhouettes stitched together from intention and ink. They move in patterns, some circular, some fractal, some nonsensical. One of them is pouring something from a teacup into a scroll. Another is whispering equations into a potted plant made of copper wire. You step carefully. They don't notice you, or rather, they choose not to. This is a space for observation, not interruption. Mainstream historians don't acknowledge the possibility of consensus hallucinations in alchemical records, but fringe thinkers, especially those who studied 15th century scrolls found in Prague, believed that at a certain threshold of knowledge, practitioners entered a shared construct, not a real place, but a meaningful one, a location built from language and loss. You approach the center of the chamber. There, suspended in midair, is the sphere, the same one from Lucien's collapse, the one that pulsed in his chest, the one you buried beneath a wall of salt and denial. It's here now, unguarded and open. You step closer, inside a miniature version of your first lab, not a model, a working replica. Tiny flasks bubble, tiny books flip, tiny notes reappear as if being written in real time. Then the image shifts. The tiny lab dissolves into a timeline. Your timeline. Moments from your life unfold in flickers. The first time you whispered a formula. The last time you saw Lucien smile. The afternoon you burned your tongue tasting powdered copper. The moment you realized you'd never be fully human again and didn't mind. Then the sphere pulses and shows you one more moment, one that hasn't happened yet. A hallway of doors. A girl, your student. She's crying over a beaker that won't boil. And your hand, older now, rests on her shoulder. You are saying something gentle, something true. You are not correcting her. You are encouraging her. The sphere closes and disappears. Quirky fact: in rare texts, the final stage of the work was not called gold completion or even perfection. It was simply called transmission. The idea that true mastery wasn't about finishing something, but passing it on. You understand now. You're not here to be finished. You're here to become a beginning. You turn away from the center. The echoes part gently. A corridor appears, lit not by candles, but by the memory of flame. You walk it. At the end, a bench, your bench, waiting. On it, a new book, blank, except the first line, student name. You smile and pick up the pen. The pen fits your hand like it's always belonged there, even though it's brand new, even though it hasn't been shaped by years of ink blots, half-scribbled formulas, or the nervous tapping that used to drive Lucien quietly insane. It's perfect in its unfamiliarity. You hold it above the page. The blank line waits. You don't write a name. Not yet. Instead, you sit back on the bench, the wood still warm as if someone just stood up, and exhale for what feels like the first time in a century. You are not being asked to prove anything anymore. You are not being tested. You are simply present. The echoes resume their movements, but they're quieter now. A few glance your way, not with expectation, but with recognition. One of them bows, hands folded around a flask that glows green and hums a lullaby. You nod back. The lab feels alive. Not in the haunted sense you've long grown used to, but in the way a meadow feels alive after a storm. Settled, breathing, ready. Your eyes drift to the far wall. There's a diagram etched into the surface, one you drew years ago on a tavern napkin back when your definition of alchemy was still charmingly naive. You thought transmutation meant changing matter. Now you know it means changing meaning. Historians still argue whether the great alchemists knew what they were really doing, whether Paracelsus Geber or Maria the Jewess understood the psychological consequences of reducing a human's narrative into symbolic salts. Some scholars insist they were simply chemists in fancy hats. Others believe they were proto-philosophers writing code in metaphor. The truth, of course, is both, and neither, and something else entirely which can't be explained with ink, only lived. You rise from the bench. There's something behind the book, a drawer. You slide it open. Inside a single vial. The liquid inside is translucent, but heavy. It doesn't reflect light. It absorbs it, labeled only with the word speak. You hold it in your palm. The echoes pause. You unstopper it and drink. It tastes like memory and longing and cloves. And then the room shifts. Not like before. This time the shift is internal. You feel the work uncoil inside you. the way a tree grows in slow, patient silence, the way rivers remember where to flow even after centuries underground, the way you knew even as a child that magic had to be real because the world was too strange and too precise not to be alive. Quirky tidbit. One 13th century scroll describes the final transmutation as the day the alchemist no longer feared their own hands, not because they became powerful, but because they no longer sought control, only care. You steady your breath, then return to the book and write the student's name, not because you have to, because you want to. The pen scratches softly across the page. The echoes smile. The walls hum a single sustained note. And from somewhere behind your eyes, a voice says, "Good." Now pass it on. You close the book, not to end something, but to begin the next lesson. You stand up, not like someone leaving a room, like someone finishing a sentence. The book stays behind on the bench closed, resting ready. It no longer belongs to you. It never really did. It belongs to the next one. The next pair of trembling hands. The next burst of uncontainable questions. The next small disaster that smells like burnt rosemary and ambition. You walk toward the back of the lab. No echoes this time. No flickering shapes. Just stillness. And a door. Wooden. Unlocked. Familiar. You touch the handle. It's smooth, polished by generations of hands. Not just alchemists. Not just students. People who tried, people who failed, people who laughed when the flask exploded and cried when the formula finally worked at 2:14 in the morning and then never again. You open the door and step into a kitchen. Yes, a kitchen. Wooden cabinets, clay cups, a kettle steaming gently on a fire that doesn't crackle but hums. A cat sleeping on the windowsill, tail twitching slightly as it dreams. You're back. Back in your mentor's cottage, Lucien's, except he's not here. But everything else is, including the letters, stacked neatly on the table. One for you. One for someone else. One unaddressed. You sit down. Open yours. Inside just one line. You figured it out. I knew you would. P.S. Check the drawer. You do. Inside a cookie. Still warm. You laugh. Really laugh. For the first time since since you believed tea could fix grief, since you thought a well-organized scroll shelf was the mark of success, you eat the cookie. It's perfect, soft, sweet, with a sharp zing of something herbal. Lavender, maybe, or crushed thyme, or the exact taste of finishing something important and realizing you don't need to do it alone anymore. Mainstream historians wouldn't even footnote this moment. They'd call it apocryphal, or a dream, or a parable inserted by later scribes. But it's real as salt, as real as the crack in your thumbnail, as real as Lucian's exasperated, "Oh gods, what have you done now?" face. You stare out the window. There's a path leading away from the house. Dirt, pebbled, shaded by old trees and new questions. You know what comes next. You leave the cookie crumbs. You leave the chair. You walk outside. The sky is impossibly wide. Clouds drift like forgotten symbols across a scroll written by the wind. You walk the path, and eventually you see a shape ahead. Small, slouched, covered in soot, and trying not to cry over a beaker of water that simply refuses to boil. You smile, you kneel, and say, "Hey, let's figure it out together." Because the work was never about gold. It was always about returning to the place you needed most and becoming the person you needed to meet. The student looks up, eyes wide rimmed with frustration, but still full of that flammable thing that got you here in the first place. Hope. I ruined it, they mutter, not quite crying, not quite giving up either. You sit beside them on the ground. No lecture, no correction, just you, a failed beaker, and the quiet rhythm of trying again. No, you say gently. You just made something no one's made before. They blink, confused. You smile. That's all alchemy ever is, trying to make something, anything, that tells the truth about who you are. They look at the beaker again. The water inside is trembling, not boiling, but shifting slightly, like it's listening. You guide their hand, adjust the flame, not hotter, just closer. Sometimes heat doesn't need to be increased, just invited in. The bubbles appear, slow, steady. The student gasps. Mainstream historical accounts love to catalog the materials of alchemy, cinnabar, sulfur, mercury, salt, but they rarely mention the moments that mattered most. A hand steadied, a mistake understood, a silence shared. They don't write down the time. Two people stared at a bubbling liquid and realized they weren't alone anymore. You stay with the student a while. You teach. You listen. You fail together. You succeed unexpectedly. You share tea from a cracked mug and laugh when the ink explodes across the wall in an accidental fire glyph shaped like a fish. One day they leave, not because they're done, because they're ready, and you remain for the next one, and the one after that. Quirky fact. In one obscure 11th century scroll, buried beneath layers of symbolism, a single marginal note reads, "True gold is what stays after the student leaves." You live quietly, but not passively. You walk often. You return to the mirror when it calls. You refill the drawer with new blank books. You keep the kettle warm until one day someone knocks, not tentatively, but with purpose. You open the door. It's you, but older, wiser, tired in a new way. They nod. You step aside and let them in. You sit across from each other at the table. There are no words, only understanding. Two versions of the same fire. Two alchemists who finally accept that the work was never meant to be finished, only handed forward. The older you stands, opens their pack and pulls out a sphere. Not the same one, but familiar. They place it on the table. It pulses and splits open. Inside a seed, just one, resting in soil that smells like books, smoke, and lavender. You both nod. The older you leaves, not with sorrow, but with peace. And you plant the seed. In a pot made of your first failed flask, you water it with ink and wait. The seed does not sprout right away. Of course not. It wouldn't be real if it did. It just sits there quiet like it's thinking, which you've learned by now is exactly what seeds do. They don't rush. They don't panic. They prepare. So you wait. And in the meantime, you live. You rearrange the shelves not for function but for beauty. You line up the books by color instead of title. You polish the old alembic just to see your face in its warped copper belly. You sing to the seed occasionally. Off-key lullabies. Lucian's old marching song. One bizarre ditty you once overheard in a tavern about flour that bites back. The days stretch like honey. Nothing dramatic happens, but everything changes. The mirror begins to ripple less violently. The echoes visit more often, sometimes just to sit in silence, sometimes to drop off a note scribbled on parchment made of pressed fern leaves. One brings you a vial of rain collected from a place that no longer exists. Another leaves behind a folded paper crane that, when opened, smells like salt and thunder. Historians still argue whether post-transmutation alchemists became immortal or simply irrelevant. Did they ascend, disintegrate, go mad with knowledge? One 15th century German text insists they transformed into birds. Another insists they became books. The most plausible theory: they became teachers. You check the pot every day. One morning, without warning, you see a tiny green curve pushing up through the soil. It's not dramatic, just honest. You whisper hello and the sprout sways. It's not just a plant. It's a memory of everything you've chosen not to forget. A memory you'll keep alive. You take out a fresh notebook, label the first page, seed notes, year 1, and underneath that smaller not for publication. Because some things are only meant to be shared over tea. The student returns, older, wiser, covered in soot and pride and new mistakes. They hug you, you cry. Together you build a bench by the garden, and sometimes you just sit, watching the seed become a tree. The kettle never runs dry. The books never stop filling. The work never ends. But it gets lighter. Quirky tidbit, a 12th century Andalusian scroll, ends with a single sentence unscribed in gold leaf. The true philosopher's stone is a well-tended place. You know that now. You don't chase gold anymore. You don't chase anything. You rest. And the work continues, exactly as it should. Time no longer passes in hours for you, it passes in lessons, in warm mugs set beside struggling hands, in ink stains on sleeves from midnight breakthroughs, in sighs shared over stubborn formulas that just won't behave. Your garden has grown wild with intention. The seed you planted, whatever it was, has become something halfway between a tree and a library. Its leaves rustle with whispering parchment. In spring, it blossoms with small paper flowers, each one unfolding into notes left by long-gone students, questions, realizations, apologies, jokes. One petal reads simply, "Thank you for staying." You don't answer. You don't need to. Because now every moment you exist is an answer. The house has changed too. Rooms that didn't exist before now appear when needed. A greenhouse, a music alcove, a room that smells like cinnamon and makes people weep for no reason, except that they probably needed to. Then mirror, it no longer leads anywhere, because there is nowhere else to go. You are where you're supposed to be. One evening, as the sun folds itself behind the hills, like a tired old letter, you sit with a new student. They are young, nervous, twitching with questions and half-formed certainty. You ask them to show you their work. They do. It's a mess, utter chaos. Brilliant. You say so. They blink. You're not going to tell me it's wrong. You shake your head. No. But it doesn't work. You sip your tea. Not yet. Historians love to categorize the alchemical process into neat Latin phrases: nigredo albedo, citrinitas, rubedo. But the truth was never that clean. The truth was you, a person who returned again and again to the mystery, not to master it, but to walk alongside it. Quirky fact: one forbidden monastic text claimed the final stage of enlightenment wasn't gold, but companionship. The line read, "The wise one does not light the fire to cook alone." You lean forward. You help. You listen. You laugh when the table catches fire. You cry when they get it right on their own. You keep showing up because the work, the real work, was never transformation. It was presence. You write another letter. Seal it. No name, just a phrase on the envelope for whoever needs it next. Then you walk outside. The tree is taller now, the sky wider, and for the first time you see what's beyond your cottage. More cottages. Dozens. Hundreds. Lights glowing in windows. Kettles hissing gently in the dusk. Other alchemists. Other students. Other versions of you scattered across time, memory, and metaphor. You wave. Some wave back. Some are too busy making tea. It doesn't matter. You're not alone. You never were. You walk back inside, close the door, and breathe. Night falls like a soft cloak over the world. No thunder. No drama. Just the quiet certainty that some chapters are meant to close with the gentlest whisper. You sit by the window. The tree outside glows faintly, each leaf lit from within, like it remembers something tender. Beneath it, the student sleeps on the bench you built together, face tilted toward the stars. Their journal rests on their chest, open to a page filled with formulas that loop and tangle like vines. You could correct half of them, but you won't. Because the point was never perfection. It was engagement. You sip your tea. It's still too hot. It always is. You never learn. You kind of love that about yourself. The fire crackles behind you, the room filled with that golden hush only real alchemy ever creates, not from flame or stone or retort, but from connection. The kind of silence made from trust, from patience, from all the mistakes you stayed long enough to learn from. Historians still argue about the final fate of the most accomplished alchemists. Did they vanish into their own concoctions? Did they transcend the mortal world? Or as one rare Venetian folio suggests, did they simply grow older quietly in places like this? Places where nothing much happens, and everything does. You glance toward the wall. The mirror still exists, but it's different now. Less a passageway, more a memory, like a drawing made in frost that fades as morning rises. It no longer calls you. It doesn't need to. Because you brought back what mattered, the work, the listening, the choice to stay. And now you close the final book. The shelf accepts it with a soft sigh, as if completing a breath it's been holding for years. The room dims. The stars lean in. The world exhales. And so do you. It's done. You smile. Because you did it. Not the gold, not the glory, but the part that mattered. The part no one else ever saw, but will feel somehow in every hand that dares to write the first page of a new notebook. A page that begins with "Dear student." Let yourself settle now. The story has ended, but its warmth lingers like the glow of coals long after the fire's gone out. The characters, the places, the strange and beautiful impossibilities, they'll wait for you. You don't need to hold them. You don't need to remember every word. You only need to rest. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. The mirror is quiet now. The echoes are still, and you're safe. Here in this imagined space where mistakes are part of the formula and kindness is the only true catalyst. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to fix anything. You were never the experiment. You were always the alchemist. Now close your eyes. Feel the bench beneath you, the cup in your hand, the breeze from a world that never quite made sense and never had to. Sleep well, traveler of metaphors. The lab is yours now. The work will wait.